Hey Aaron, hopefully you got the first email that I gave you. I just did number 1 and 2 on paper, and then that way you could kind of see the steps and maybe be able to, they kind of all follow the same pattern, like taking out a common factor. So hopefully you were able to see that once I gave you those for help. And then I'll do 4, 6, and 7 as a video, or at least 4 and 6. I'll see what I'll see if I can do 7. I'm just kind of winging this off the top of my head. Haven't really looked at these questions yet, but they look okay. So I'll just dive in right to number 4. Number 4 said, rewrite the expression secant x minus cos x over tan x in terms of sine and cos, and then simplify it. So let's just write this. So secant x minus cos x over tan x. Okay, so all A is asking you to do is just write in terms of sine and cos. Okay, so if you're looking at that, obviously cos is already in terms of sine and cos, but these other two need to be rewritten. Okay, so your formula sheet is going to come in handy. If you look at your formula sheet, secant x is the exact same thing as 1 over cos. Okay, so I'm going to go 1 over cos. I'm just going to replace that, right? I haven't changed anything because secant x is the same thing as 1 over cos x. Okay, and then leave the minus cos x there, and then go over tan x. Now tan in terms of sine and cos is sine over cos. Okay. All right. So when I look at that, I firstly want to deal with that numerator. Okay. And the reason I want to deal with that numerator is because it's subtraction and I have a fraction. And when I'm subtracting fractions, I need a common denominator. So right now I have a cos x here, but I don't have one over here. Okay. So I'm going to add one. And if I added one to the bottom, I have to add one to the top. All right. So now I'm just going to rewrite what I just did. So I have the 1 minus, then I have cos x times cos x, which is cos squared x. So cos squared x over cos x. And then that's all over sine x cos x. Okay. So I'm kind of liking this because right here, 1 minus cos squared x is a Pythagorean identity. So on your formula sheet, you would see something like this: sine squared x plus cos squared x equals 1. Right? So you have to manipulate it, right? You have to subtract the cos squared x on both sides so that you get this, right? So that 1 minus cos squared x is the same thing as sine squared x. So we're going to write that. Okay. So I need to go to a new piece of paper. So sine squared x over cos x. And then that was divided by sine x over cos x. Okay. I just like writing my division like that now when I start simplifying, okay? Because you know that when you divide, you're basically multiplying by the reciprocal, okay? So let's do that, and then we're going to be able to cancel lots of stuff out, which is the best. So here's cos x, now times, and then reciprocal. So cos x is going to be in the numerator, and sine x is going to be in the denominator. So hopefully you can see already that stuff is going to cancel, right? You have a cos x in the numerator and denominator, so that can go away. And you also have a sine x, 2 sine x in the numerator and 1 in the bottom. So I can for sure cancel the 1 out, and then I just usually cross that exponent out, meaning I just have the 1 left. So my final answer is going to be sine x. Okay, so that whole thing at the start, like here, right, that whole thing right there, is just equal to sine x, which is crazy. Because if I were to see that, like, I know you don't have to do this, but like on a departmental, it might have something like that. And you'd be like, what? I can't type that in my calculator. But then you simplify it and then you see that it just equals sine x. And it's like, oh, I can easily type that in my calculator, right? So yeah, that's number 4. Number 6 looks at expanding. So 6 says expand the following and then simplify it to a primary trig function. So we have secant x minus tan x times sine x plus 1. So basically, this is like a binomial times a binomial. So you have to FOIL it, okay? Which kind of sounds gross, but we'll be able to simplify it after. So we got to go like this, right? That times that, that times that, that times that, that times that. So we're going to start, just go with secant x, sine x, right? That's that times that, so that's good. And then secant x times 1 is just positive secant x. And then negative tan x times sine x. So that's going to be negative tan x sine x. And then negative tan x times 1 is negative tan x. Okay, yuck. So now what I'm going to do is write everything in terms of sine and cos to see if that helps me. To see if I can cross anything out. Okay, so secant in terms of sine and cos is 1 over cos. So 1 over cos times sine x. Okay, plus secant is 1 over cos x, and then minus tan x over sine x. So tan is the same thing as sine over cos, right? And then you still have the sine x in the numerator from there, right? And then minus tan x. And again, I said tan was sine over cos. Okay, so this actually works out lovely because you know how we're subtracting and adding, right? Oh, now that looks like equals. Okay, but we're subtracting and adding, right? And we actually already have the common denominator made for us. See how they all have cos x in them? That's perfect, okay? So in order to, I guess, just simplify this further, like that can go in the numerator. There you have 2 of them. And that's, I guess, it. So what this is saying is sine x over cos x plus, actually, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to write it over 1 denominator, okay? So I'm going to mush all my numerators together, okay? So I have a sine x plus 1, right? Minus sine x squared, or sine squared x. And minus sine all over cos. Okay. Now, what on earth can I do? I can cancel, okay? So right now I see I have a sine x minus sine x in my numerator. So that's like saying I have 1 minus 1. So that cancels completely, right? So that goes away. And then I'm left with 1 minus sine squared x. Now, 1 minus sine squared x is part of your, or one of your Pythagorean identities, okay? So 1 minus sine squared x equals cos squared x. Okay, that's the first Pythagorean identity on your formula sheet. Okay, so now you're going to substitute that in. So instead of 1 minus sine squared x, you're going to write cos squared x. Okay, so let's go cos squared x over, what was in our denominator? I think it was just cos x. I better check. Not that I do the wrong thing here. Yeah, cos right there. So that's perfect because now what can we cancel? Right? I can cancel that cos in the denominator because there's only one. And then I have 2 of those coses in the numerator. So just cross that little 2 out and it's equal to cos x. Okay, good. So yeah, that is that. Just looking at number 7 here. I can do number 7a. I think. I'm just laughing at myself right now. This is the first time I looked at this. Cosecant 2x. How about I do number 7 on paper just so I don't lead you on like a big rat race on the computer and then all of a sudden I don't actually prove it. So I'll do number 7 on paper and then send that to you in a different email, which actually might work out better because then I'm not uploading as big of a file as a video. Okay. So yeah, I will do number 7. I promise it will just be in paper format. Okay. All right. So hopefully that helps. Let me know if it doesn't and I can try and help you further. It is a super hard section. It's usually the most hated section also. So that doesn't help. And it also doesn't help that you're trying to learn this through a screen. So I appreciate that you're trying. Okay. That's like one step further than a lot of people. So give yourself some credit for even attempting. Okay. And I know if it doesn't come right away, it's okay. Just stop and take a breath and then try a new route. Okay. All right. I will send this your way.